Hello everyone and welcome to today's lesson on British English. Today we are heading to the fictional village of Ambridge to listen to The Archers, the world's longest running radio soap opera. In this video, we aren't just learning vocabulary, we are exploring the intersection of colloquial British speech and the real-life psychological weight of social and financial pressures in a rural setting. We will be focusing on three powerful idioms used by the Archer family during a particularly high-stakes Sunday lunch. First, we'll hear David Archer remind his family about financial reality with the phrase "money doesn't grow on trees" during a heated debate over public services. Next, we'll see a lighter side of village life as Ruth Archer finds herself in a pickle over a Valentine's Day surprise gone wrong. Finally, we will analyze a much more serious moment where the family discusses the future of their farm Brookfield and why they decided against opening a can of worms regarding the family inheritance. Listen closely to this upcoming audio sequence to hear these expressions in their natural context. Let's listen to this sequence.
And Pip, we're going to bring you into the farm partnership straight away.
20% for you and 40 each for me and your mum.
So, what do you all think? How does that sound?
Well, look, I didn't know what to expect. I honestly wasn't counting on anything, so yeah, I'm happy.
Good. And what about you two?
We know it's a lot to take in.
Yeah, just a bit. Can I ask, where does this leave Elizabeth, Schuler and Kenton? Do they still get a share of the farm if it's sold?
Now, we did think about opening that can of worms, didn't we?
Yeah, but in the end we decided it wasn't worth it.
Because we're never going to sell the farm anyway.
And let's be brutally honest, you'll only inherit and be liable for the tax once both of us have died.
Now that you've heard these idioms in their natural context, let's break down the social and financial weight behind each phrase. From Valentine's the pickles to the can of worms of family inheritance, we'll now explore why these expressions are so essential to understanding British life.
All right, let's picture something for a second. Think of the perfect English countryside. You know, rolling green hills, a cozy little village, that real tight-knit community feel. That's the world of The Archers, Britain's longest-running radio drama. But here's the thing. Underneath that charming surface, there's a really complex social world going on. And today, we're going to crack the code by diving into three essential British idioms that are your key to speaking and thinking like a local. Okay, so take a look at this. It's a lovely postcard from the village, right? Greetings from Ambridge. But then, read the quote. You take your life in your hands when you walk through our fields. Whoa. That's a bit of a switch, isn't it? And that's Ambridge in a nutshell. To an outsider, it looks all quaint and peaceful, but if you listen closely, it's a minefield of unspoken rules, what some have even called colloquial combat. To get by here, you absolutely have to master the local lingo.
And that makes it the perfect case study for us. By just listening to how the characters go about their daily lives, we can start to decode how these really common English idioms actually reveal some much deeper social dynamics, things about money, politeness, and even conflict.
So we're going to go on a little linguistic road trip through Ambridge. We're going to see how the people there use very specific phrases, these idioms, to handle all the pressures of their lives, from worrying about money to dealing with awkward family secrets. All right, so here's our game plan. We've got three main stops. First up, we'll dig into the economic reality of the place and the language they use to talk about limits. Then we'll get into the social dance, you know, how to handle embarrassment. And finally, we are going to tackle those deep, buried secrets and the phrases that keep them locked away. And for each stop, there's one key idiom you have to know. So let's start with our first stop, the cold, hard facts of money in the countryside. For a community that lives and dies by the land and the weather, being pragmatic isn't just a personality trait. It's a flat-out survival skill, and you can hear it in the way they talk. And here's our first big one. I'm sure you've heard it. Money doesn't grow on trees. Now, we all know it as a proverb, but in a place like Ambridge, it's so much more. It's a tool. It works like a verbal stop sign, a way to instantly shut down any idea that sounds too expensive or just plain wasteful. And the irony here is just perfect. You've got the character David Archer, a farmer, saying this during a debate about spending. I mean, he is literally surrounded by trees. But that's the whole point. It brilliantly captures this core tension. Just because you see all this green abundance around you, it doesn't mean there's an endless supply of cash in the bank. So let's be really clear about how this is used. This is not a gentle hint. The tone is completely authoritative. You use it to shoot down a project that has no budget or to say no to someone wanting something expensive. It's how you draw a hard line in the sand between what somebody wants and what's actually possible.
So, you see, it's all about asserting authority. It draws this really firm line between what someone wants and what's actually possible. And pay attention to the tone here. It's dismissive. This phrase is not the start of a negotiation. It's the end of one. Period.
In this show, we actually hear a farmer, David Archer, use this exact phrase. He's in the middle of a debate about government spending, and he says it to kind of push back on this idea that there are infinite resources to go around. For him, it's a direct reflection of the constant financial pressure he is under.
And this is where it gets so interesting. For a farmer, someone whose entire livelihood literally comes from things that grow out of the ground, the phrase has this incredibly rich irony. It's not just about balancing a spreadsheet. It's about the deep psychological weight that comes with knowing your resources are totally at the mercy of the weather, the soil, and the market.
All right, let's move on. We've talked about money, which is pretty black and white. Now we're getting into something much, much trickier, the world of social situations. This is where language isn't used to build walls, but to kind of smooth over all those awkward cracks you find in everyday life. Which brings us to our second fantastic idiom, to be in a pickle. It means you're in a tough, maybe embarrassing spot. But just think about the word itself, pickle. It sounds kind of funny, doesn't it? And that's the whole point. It's classic British understatement. You use this lighthearted, almost silly-sounding word to downplay how serious a messy situation actually is. But a pickle is one thing. It's about a temporary, awkward moment. Some problems are much, much bigger than that.
Think about it. The word pickle sounds a little goofy, a little silly, and that's exactly the point. You use this for problems that are awkward, sure, but they're not the end of the world. It's a social tool. By picking this lighthearted word, the speaker is basically saying, hey, let's handle this politely without making a big deal out of it. It's such a clever way to just lower the tension in the room.
We hear a perfect example of this when the character Stella says to her friend Ruth Archer, "You've really got yourself in a pickle, haven't you?" So, what exactly is Ruth's pickle?
Well, check this out. Ruth has planned this whole big surprise Valentine's dinner for her husband, David. The thing is, she has no idea that David has secretly planned his own surprise meal for her, for the very next day. So now neither of them can say a word without completely ruining the other person's surprise. They are totally, completely stuck.
And this, right here, is a classic example of what's often called British social comedy. It's this situation where the intense desire to be polite and not spoil a surprise actually ends up creating a much bigger, more awkward problem than just telling the truth would have. It's this recurring theme where politeness itself actually becomes the source of the conflict. It's brilliant.
Okay, now for our last stop. And this one gets serious. We're moving away from everyday awkwardness and into the realm of really deep-seated conflicts, of long family histories, and the kind of secrets that you absolutely do not talk about. And the idiom for this situation is just so visual, so perfect. To open a can of worms. Just imagine it. You think you're just opening one little can to deal with one little problem, but the second you pop that lid, 100 other slimy, wriggling complications come spilling out, and there is no way you are ever getting them back in the can. You've just made everything a million times worse. Let me give you a classic example from the show. The Archer family gets together to talk about who's going to inherit the farm, a hugely sensitive topic. David makes the call not to bring up whether his siblings will get a piece of it. Why? Because, in his words, it would be opening that can of worms. See the difference? This isn't just a pickle. This isn't a moment of social awkwardness. This could literally reignite old feuds and blow the entire family apart.
And you can immediately feel that the stakes here are way, way higher than just being in a pickle. In this scene, David Archer is talking about family inheritance. He refuses to even go there because he knows that talking about it would be opening that can of worms, and it could tear the entire family apart.
So when do you actually pull this phrase out? Well, its main job is to justify being silent. It's a signal to everyone around you that you are deliberately choosing not to talk about something because you know it's a minefield. You're basically saying, nope, we're not going there. I know what's behind that door, and we are all better off if we just leave it shut.
And you can totally see why. In a place like Ambridge, family history goes back generations. The whole question of who inherits the land is a central and often explosive theme. It's all tied up with legacy, duty, and these really deep-seated family dynamics.
So, when David uses the phrase opening a can of worms, it's incredibly revealing. It's not just a casual saying. It signifies a conscious, deliberate choice to avoid what would probably be a massive family conflict. It's basically an admission that some problems are so thorny, so complicated, that it's just better to leave them buried to keep the peace.
So let's put these two side by side, because the difference is absolutely crucial. Being in a pickle is all about embarrassment. The stakes are maybe some social awkwardness. It's a messy little situation you have to get out of. But opening a can of worms, that's about deep, painful complication. The stakes are way higher. We're talking family conflict, old wounds, and the outcome isn't fixing a problem, it's creating a dozen new ones. Okay, so we've been through the 3 big pressures of life in Ambridge. Now, let's pull it all together into a simple, handy little guide, your lexicon for speaking the local language. Look at this. It lays it out perfectly. Money doesn't grow on trees is all about the concept of limitation, and you say it with an authoritative tone. In a pickle is about embarrassment, and the tone is polite. It minimizes the problem. And finally, open a can of worms is about deep complication, and you say it with a cautionary, almost fearful tone. 3 different social pressures, 3 perfectly designed linguistic tools.
So, what have we got? We've seen how money doesn't grow on trees is a way to talk about real, serious financial pressure. We've learned that being in a pickle often describes this uniquely British kind of social awkwardness that's born from being too polite. And we've figured out that deciding not to open a can of worms is a very strategic choice to sidestep deep, complicated conflict. So, the crucial point here is this. Idioms are like little cultural fossils. They're not just vocabulary words to memorize for a test. They are these amazing windows into how a group of people thinks about things like money, how they handle social situations, and what conflicts they choose to face, or maybe more importantly, to avoid. They really do reveal a culture's pressures and its history. So, what does this all add up to? Let's pull all these threads together now and really try to get inside the Ambridge mindset to understand what it actually means to speak like a local.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, the language of the Archers shows us a community that's super pragmatic about money, that would much rather downplay its problems than make a scene, and that is very, very careful about digging up old conflicts. It really boils down to this. To fit in, you have to know when to put your foot down financially, when to laugh off an awkward moment, and most importantly, when to just keep that can of worms sealed tight.
What's so cool is that the language really does reveal the psychology of the community. The people of Ambridge are pragmatic about their money. That's the tree's idiom. They're very understated about their anxieties. They downplay it with a pickle. And they are incredibly wary of digging up old family dramas, which they keep locked away in that can of worms.
And that, right there, is the real secret. Speaking like a local isn't about memorizing phrases from a list. It's about understanding the social strategy. It's knowing when to put your foot down, when to have a little laugh at a problem, and, maybe most importantly, when the smartest thing you can possibly do is say nothing at all.
And you know, that kind of brings it all back to you, doesn't it? Every culture, every language has its own versions of pickles and cans of worms. So think about it. What are the unspoken rules that your language and your idioms help you navigate in your world every single day?
Thank you for watching our exploration of advanced British English through the latest events at Meadow Farm. If you found this lesson helpful for your English studies, please like the video, comment below with the idiom you found most useful, and subscribe to our channel to stay updated on our future content. Thank you for your support.